Hello, everybody, and welcome to Fire Engineering Talk Radio and another installment of the Professional Volunteer Fire Department. Tom Merrill here. So glad to have you joining me for a very special episode. I think it's special anyway. It's episode number 50 of the Professional Volunteer Fire Department, sponsored by Fire Engineering here on Blog Talk Radio. It was back in 2014 when Chief Bobby Halton told me he was kind of looking for somebody to do a podcast focusing on the volunteer side of our business, and extended the very kind invitation to me to take that task on. And it was back on October 7th, 2014 that the Professional Volunteer Fire Department made its premiere. And here we are 50 episodes later, and I think it's gone pretty darn well. Certainly covered a lot of different topics of interest and of concern and of importance to the fire service world, especially the volunteer side of our operation. I've had a lot of different guests on too in those last several years, but for this 50th episode, I wanted to do something special, and I was giving it some thought, and I was wondering what I could do to mark this special occasion. And in my opinion, very special occasion. So I thought about it, and I thought back on this journey I've been on here for the last 7 or 8 years and how freaking awesome it's been. And not just the podcast, but the articles I've written, the teaching opportunities I've had at FDIC and beyond FDIC as well. And this whole professional volunteer message that I've been preaching and am so passionate about, a message that's been received by firefighters around the U.S. in a very positive way. And it's allowed me also to meet literally hundreds of like-minded firefighters, so many of whom have become friends as well, and true fire service brothers and sisters. So I have some special guests on this evening, though, who really helped me along the way. 2 gentlemen right now, and we're hoping for a third, but the 2 that are here, Chief Salka and Chief Lasky, they're truly special, and I have so much to thank them for in terms of mentoring and encouraging and offering me opportunities and introducing me to so many fire service leaders and truly bestowing upon me their friendship. And I want to thank you guys so much for doing that to me, and also for taking the time out of your crazy and your hectic schedules to be here tonight. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. I know it wasn't easy. We were bouncing emails back and forth about this day, that day, but we made it work, and here we are tonight. So I want to thank you for being here, and I want you to know that I really appreciate you helping me along the way on this journey, and the impact that you've had on me in so many ways is just so special. Even before I knew you, or let's say before you even knew who I was, you have no idea the impact you were making on me. So, Chief Salka, Chief Lasky, thank you for being here with me tonight.
It's an honor. It's an honor, buddy. And John, you don't know how bad, John, I want to say. So congratulations, Frank, on your 1000th episode. We go way back and all that. But Tom, I'm telling you, and first of all, you know my best buddy, John, loves to brag on you. You know how much I do. Your contributions, and you're very kind with what you just said. And but buddy, you've done an incredible job. I actually have your information in one of my programs. When I do the volunteer firefighter defining commitment, there's a whole page dedicated to you, your column, your show, because of the impact you're having on the fire service, especially on and I've said it before. It's not yes, it's volunteers, but there's so many people that get so much out of what you do. But 50 shows is that's no easy task, buddy. Congratulations, man.
Thank you very much, Chief, for everything you've done for me. And Chief Salka, if you remember, you were my first guest that I had lined up back in October 2014. And do you remember what happened that night?
I do not remember what happened.
You weren't there. We had a technical difficulty. Here I am, Frank. It's my premiere episode, and I had you all lined up, and we even talked earlier. Everything was lined up, and I'm on there, and I'm waiting for you to call in. You don't remember that, huh? Oh, yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Must have been an exciting episode.
Well, like all good firefighters, I had a plan B up my sleeve, and I did ramble on for a good hour without you talking about what we were going to do on the show. But I kept looking, and we talked after the show. And for whatever reason, when you called in that number for Fire Engineering's Blog Talk Radio number, it wasn't going through. That was my premiere episode.
Well, it
I've
made
got-
it memorable.
Yes.
I've got one of those John Wayne cutouts, with him with the cowboy hat and the rifle and all that. And I thought I'd just stick a John's picture on that because there's been times he's like, "Where's John at?" "Oh, I couldn't make it. Or I forgot."
Next time, have one of them. You can always just put it next to you.
So I got to go off topic immediately here, Chief Lasky, because are you talking one of those life-size cardboard cutouts of John Wayne?
Oh yeah, absolutely, dude.
I have one of those as well. My daughter's got it for me for my birthday one year because he's my number one hero movie star of all time. So I have it sitting in the den next door.
I'm telling you, it's from a great movie with Dean Martin, Ricky Nelson, Angie Dickinson. Oh God, I can't forget his name. The old guy,
Rio Bravo or
Rio Bravo. But,
yeah,
there's so
Walter Brennan.
Hey,
Walter
Rick.
Brennan.
Hey, Rick, if I had a full-size cutout of a movie actor, who would it be?
Oh God. Well, if it was a singer, it'd be Johnny Cash. If
An old movie. Come on, I quote it all the time.
It would have to be Clarence from It's a Wonderful
Clarence
Life.
or Jimmy Stewart, one or the other. That's right.
Yeah.
It's a Wonderful Life, which I love.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I wanted to start off with a real simple question. And Chief Salka, I'll start with you. I'll put you on the spot here. To you, what defines professionalism? Does it have anything to do with a paycheck?
Obviously not. And I know you've addressed that point probably on more than one article and probably in numerous articles, if not by title, certainly, just mentioning it in passing. Professionalism, we all know, is the quality of your work, the quality of what you produce when you're, fighting fires, doing emergency work, whatever fire department you're in. Matter of fact, I was just teaching the other day, 2 different places at the Andy Fredericks training days, and then just a couple of days later, connected. I didn't even go home in between. Was the down in Richmond, Virginia. They have a nice annual conference down there, and I can't remember which one it was because it all rushes into one thing. But I was specifically talking about the volunteer fire department and how whether you volunteer, whether you're paid, whether you're on call, the volunteering ends the night they vote you into the volunteer fire company. That's when the volunteering ends. You volunteered, yes, you're in, boom. Now you're simply a firefighter. There's no definition, Now, some volunteer departments even have it on their coat, Smithtown Volunteer Fire Department, whatever it is, out of pride, not out of anything else. And certainly professionalism, is the quality of your work. And
I love that. I've never heard you say that before. I love that. The volunteering part of it stopped the moment you got voted on.
That's right. It lasts 1 minute. It lasts 1 minute, and then you're simply a firefighter.
I love
as
that.
I mentioned before, it's, there's so many volunteer fire departments. Thank goodness for my buddy Butch Cobb, who worked for ISO, is more than 40,000. I don't know where people look up their numbers, but they know because they're involved with each one of them. And a great majority of them, and you probably know better than I do what the percentage is of volunteers versus career people in this country. And I've known volunteer departments that were so professional, so expert, so well-trained. And I've known career departments that couldn't put a fire out in a top hat, but they collected a salary every week. So you're certainly marching right down the right track. I got 45 years in the volunteer fire service. It outlasted the 2 career departments that I've been in, including the FDNY. And I'm still, I don't want to say going strong, but I'm still going,
Right. And I always say,
there he is.
Yeah, there he is. Chief Halton. Thank you for joining us. Oh, we got to unmute him here.
Muted, buddy.
He's got to mute. There
All
he
right, boys.
is.
Sun's out, guns out.
Look at
He's
him.
got no clothes on.
This is a
Tom, is
family
this
show, Chief.
Tom, is this the video or is this just the sound? Because if they're just listening to sound, Chief Halton, he does have some clothes on. He's a swimsuit.
Yes.
Hey, I must have missed the invitation for the boat trip today,
You're always welcome, John. You know that. You show up. Marsha says hi.
Oh, hi.
Hey. Well, but John and Tom understand that's the boat that Bobby takes to his big boat. Like when you go on the cruise
Oh, yeah.
and they take you on the little boat to the big boat. See, that's the little boat that takes him to the big SS Halton.
I gotcha. Well, Chief Halton, thank you so much for being here with us. We really appreciate it. I was just saying that this is my 50th episode on fire engineering, and I wanted to have you three special guests on because you mean so much to me. You've helped me so much and mentored me and encouraged me and helped me to get to where I am today. So thank you for taking the time to be here. I appreciate it very much.
Hey, my pleasure, buddy. We wouldn't miss it for the world. Ricky gave me the reminder phone call, and I was like, "Oh, I got to call in." So.
Yeah.
I said, I'll call in from my I guess the SS Halton, but
I'm the only one that's home of the three of us.
I'm in the hotel.
Yep. And I just got home from a college trip, so I'm here. I'm home. Chief Halton, Chief Salka was just talking about what defines professionalism, and I love what you said, Chief Salka, too, about how the volunteer part ends when you're accepted as a member. I like to say in my presentation, you're not just a member, you're not just a volunteer, you're a firefighter now, and so, certain criteria you got to live up to.
It's always kind of bothered me, that word, because I volunteered. We weren't conscripted. I mean, nobody put a gun to our heads to join the fire service. It's an all volunteers fire service. Just some guys get paid and some gals don't. That's just how it goes.
Absolutely.
So, Bobby, I've been to your volunteer fire department in Oklahoma, and we were there for a push-in ceremony for a new tanker at your place. That was pretty cool. They did the whole ceremony, Tom, at his volunteer firehouse there in Oklahoma. It was pretty cool. They got a lot of tradition there.
Oh, that's great to hear.
We just got a couple more new rigs, and they're some of the most professional cats you'll ever meet in the face of the planet. I mean, they're totally squared away. I'm trying to find the guy who's unprofessional. You know what I mean?
I know him.
Or gal. You found him?
I know him. Yeah.
You know.
Well, I got to tell you, all of you chiefs, I was just at the Pennsylvania State Fire Association's 142nd conference, and it was hosted by the Limerick Fire Department in Pennsylvania. I was blown away with their professionalism. What a great group.
They got the green rigs, right?
They have the green rigs. Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of history, a lot of tradition, but I'll tell you, the pride just oozed out of all of them, from the youngest member to the most senior member. As a matter of fact, while I was there talking to the chief who runs a cafe, owns his own cafe, he served the pulled pork meal the one night, which was out of this world. And I got the chief, the president, and one of their lieutenants are going to be on one of my future podcasts, because they have built an operation there that is filled with not just competent, trained, good firefighters, but they're filled with pride. They love it. And I want to talk to them about what their secret is.
Well, I'll bet you, Tom, and John, you can help me out here. The fact is, the door is always open. If somebody shows up at your job, no matter who they are, the door's probably open. They can come in, walk around, look at the rigs. Like, say you were just out visiting, you saw a beautiful firehouse, and you knocked on the door. You know the guys are going to let you in. You say, "Hey, I'm a visiting firefighter. Just take a look at the rigs." There's no chance the guys would say, "No, you can't come in here."
How did I know that was going to make it onto this show? How did I know?
John, would that happen where you volunteered? Never, right, brother?
I'll tell you what's interesting, and I mentioned this the other day too at a conference. I know a couple of firefighters, actually a large group, that went cross country on motorcycles not long after 9/11, maybe within the year, right? And they never slept in a hotel. All they did was sleep in firehouses, and they had no plan. They had no roadmap. Every place they went, they just looked around for the firehouse. If it was paid guys, they banged on the door. If it was volunteers, they rode around till they saw a guy with a blue light or a chainsaw, and they always accommodated them. They say, "No, come back in 2 hours. Go have lunch and come back, and we'll have the bunk room set up for you guys." And they never slept in a hotel across the whole country. And he said certainly more than half of them were volunteer departments that put them up. Yeah.
I'll give you a pass, Tom. I won't bring it up.
No, that's okay, Chief. I have to say, for our listeners, Chief Halton has an incredible story of when he stopped by my department one day and knocked on the door, and we still haven't identified who the young firefighter was that met him at the door and said it wasn't a good day to come in, and they turned Chief Halton away. Of course, not knowing who he was. But we got that one down, have we, Chief Halton?
Oh, no. Yeah. And Marcia was in the car going, "Hey, big shot. There you go. Guys,
I think we made it up to you, though, when you came back to celebrate our 100th anniversary, I think. We made that up. But, the listeners may not understand that you three, in addition to all the incredible work you've done as paid firefighters and continue to do in so many other aspects of your careers, you're all so heavily involved in the volunteer side, aren't you? Chief Lasky, tell us a little bit about your volunteer experience now. You're loving it.
My dad was a firefighter, in the southwest suburbs of Chicago. And so it's easy for me to fall in love with the job. They'd blow the siren, whatever. I'd jump in the car. My dad would take me to calls. I'd be standing there watching him fight fires. He's a roofer, so naturally he's on the roof, punching holes in and doing things. And I couldn't wait. And, I ended up as an explorer, ended up as a volunteer at the same time. I was volunteering, I was part-timing. I'm volunteering again. When you're running a fire department as the fire chief on the career side, it's kind of hard. You can't commit to a volunteer fire department, but I have the honor of, I'm a member of the Wichita West Volunteer Fire Department in Wichita County, Texas, working for Chief Ryan Fetzer. You met him, Tom. He's
great guy.
Ryan's he's a great.
Tell that's a professional department.
First of all, he's another one of these guys. Another one of those I put in things. One of the smartest people I met. But he's a great boss. He's a great chief. He does so much for that place. And I've said it before because so many of us have done that. They have no idea what it takes to be the fire chief, and it doesn't mean just career. Volunteer. John, you're going through it again. The phone calls, the meetings, the complaints, the compliments. All of a sudden, get up here. There's this going on with all this stuff, so on and so forth. And it's kind of like going to a concert. You're not supposed to know that the light bulb burned out backstage because you're there for a concert. The firefighters aren't supposed to know about all the little things that are going on behind the curtain, but the chiefs have to do a lot of stuff. And Ryan does a great job. I'm so lucky. We got such a great group there. You met Chris, Bashford, one of our captains.
Yep, captain, yep.
Michael Albert is one of the assistant chiefs. And then we got Destiny and Mark as our lieutenants. And I'm with Joe Dillon. Joe's from John's neck of the woods. He's from Rockland County. About 45 minutes from John. They volunteer, his family, his dad. Joe's in the Air Force. He's a staff sergeant in the Air Force at Shepherd Air Force Base, Wichita Falls. He volunteers with us. But I'm loving it. I'm driving the engine and I'm going to EMS calls. It was funny, Tom, because people kept asking Chris Bashford, my captain, does Lasky really drive the engine for you? And he's like, well, yeah. You want me to show you a picture? I'm like, hell yeah. I'm doing 3 a.m, like the other night before I had to go to the airport in the morning, 3 a.m, going an EMS run. I'm loving it. And you mentioned, I want to say it's the whole professional thing. Bobby talked about it. John did so right. They were so absolute right on top of it. I've always said, there's the only difference is one gets paid and one volunteers. And I always compare to the memorial in Emmitsburg. I just asked this. I was just in Louisiana, in Lafayette, with a good group there. And I asked them, I said, so how many memorials are there in Emmitsburg? Refresh my memory. There's 2, right? Isn't there one for career departments up front? And they stick the volunteer one in the back, and the big department's going in front. And they all start smiling. I go, no, there's one stone. There's one stone. You die in the line of duty. You drop your guard one time. You get chiseled on the same stone. If that's not a message for you that we all belong to the same course, the same cause, if you will, there's not 2 different memorials there. You're chiseled on the same one at our National Fire Academy. So
yeah, I work at the 911 center. I'm a fire dispatcher and been doing it for 28 years now. And no one ever calls in having an emergency saying, send the paid fire department or send the volunteer fire department. They say, send the fire department. I need help.
Well, and John said it best, and Bobby said it. Look, I love the career side. I love the volunteer side. It's my heritage. Just like Bobby and John, we've done both. When people want to say that you can't count on these guys or count on those guys, or these guys are, look at them, they can't drive the engine, they can't stretch a line. John, how many times you and I have watched videos and found out, oh, that's a career department that can't seem to stretch the hose line to the front door. Right. Or there's what I'm saying? It's so if somebody thinks that, you said it best, John. There's departments out there that on the career side that couldn't, that couldn't fight a fire in a top hat. There's great career fire departments and there's great volunteer fire departments. I always say one gets paid and one does it. I'll just say that the goodness of their heart to take care of their community and those they go to church with, those they coach Little League with, or Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts. So, that's like the program, the volunteer firefighter, defining commitment. That's what it is.
Yeah.
You know, their defining commitment is selflessness.
And Chief Salka, you've been involved in the volunteers for what, 45 years, did you say now?
45 years. I just counted it up. I
Good
don't think about it
God.
too often, but 45 years is a long time. And I remember, I remember being a young, brand new firefighter in Mineola out on Long Island. And I'm still buddies with a couple of guys out there, and I still, in contact with them.
Best overhead siren in the volunteer fire service.
Absolutely, the Thunderbolt, the rotating high-low siren. It's a great
Go
siren.
to YouTube, folks. Go to YouTube. You can listen to it. It's incredible.
And I'll tell you what,
What's
you
it
can
called?
hear that 3 towns away. Amazingly.
The Thunderbolt?
But back to Mineola. So there I am, and in a small volunteer fire department. It was just, it was just great being exposed to so many great people. Even senior people. Marty Dauber, who's like, oh gosh, I think Marty's 90 now. He was my first captain, and a bunch of other fellas, and it's just been a wonderful experience right from the get-go.
And you're going through your second term as chief again. You went in the 90s, and now you're doing it again, finishing up.
Yes, I was in the 90s. I was chief in Sapelman Grove, and I got talked into doing it again. I should say I volunteered for it, because I did. I stepped up. But and here I'm about to finish another 6 or 7 months. I'll be done with my second. It's a 9-year term now, so it's 3, 3, and 3. Unlike with you guys, it's 5, 5, and 5, right? Second assistant, first assistant chief. That's a long commitment right there. But it's not like you're leaving the department anyway. You get up every night for the runs. You get up every day for the runs. You either you go to the firehouse and you jump on a rig, or you drive there in a car. Now, obviously, being a chief, like Rick said, anybody who's been a chief, even of the smallest volunteer fire department, which is, I thought I was small until I saw Rick's volunteer fire department, but it's still a big job. You still got a lot of stuff to do. Never mind these multi-station volunteer departments that have, 3 and 4 stations and 150, 200 members. But yeah, it's been a pleasure being chief, and it's going to be a pleasure handing the keys back in.
Well, speaking of the keys, Tom and Bobby, I don't know if you've driven past that firehouse, but last time I was there, they put a sign up, like whenever John's the chief, they put a sign up, presently serving Chief John Salka. So when they hear the siren go off, everybody pulls off the road. If they think if he's coming with his Chiefs car, it's like, get the hell out of the way.
Not true.
It's like Richard Petty. It's like,
I am a responsible emergency vehicle operator.
Hey, they do the same thing for me when I go to the drive-through at Wendy's. They say, now sir.
With that beautiful Mustang that you have.
And Chief, you're actively involved down in your area with the volunteers, are you not?
Yeah, I sure am. It's a Limestone Fire Protection District number 2. Great house. And we're kind of a combination department these days. We've got a couple of career guys and gals that ride, and but we're 90% volunteer with a paid contingent of about, well, maybe 10% paid contingent these days. But a lot of that's stuff and whatnot, but that happens during the day. But we still have great responses. I mean, it's a great organization.
Here you guys are the legends of the fire service, and you're connected so in depth with the volunteer side. So that's why I wanted to have you guys on also tonight.
Tom, I'm telling you, yes, my wife Jamie, I'm like, I mean, the tones go off and I'm gone. I'm out the door. I'm like, and old Bobby's department almost gave me their old ladder truck. In fact, I actually didn't take it. I chickened out. Their old ladder truck that was originally from New Jersey, and it was just going to be a museum piece, a parade piece, and all that. And then Bobby, I don't know if I told you, John's Valley Department, South Blooming Grove in Orange County, their ladder truck, they have a new one now, but their ladder truck was ladder 24 in Manhattan, first due at the Empire State Building. They took it from New York, and it's like a muscle car. It's like a muscle car. They redid the whole thing. Diamond plate, paint, compartments, bumpers, stuff. They actually at one point dropped a new motor, a new aerial ladder, it's a 100-foot Seagrave stick, and they got a new ladder truck. So they've been trying to figure out what they're going to do with the old one. And there was a department Tennessee was going to take it. They changed my other tanker, and we jumped on it. My chief Ryan Fetzer, Wichita West. This Saturday we're flying up there. Me and Will. If I could talk about Will for a second, Tom.
Yeah, go ahead, Chief.
The volunteer chief of Freeburg Cooper, which is in Wichita County where I'm at. He's also president of Chiefs Association. And he's the head of the shops for 25, 30 years for the city of Wichita Falls Fire Department. And when he heard I was going up there to pick it up, to drive it all the way back from New York to Texas, he goes, get me up there. I'll go with you. So We're flying up there Saturday, and we're driving his ladder truck back, and the guys, we're out of our minds. It's so exciting. We can't, and somebody said, what year is it? It's an 81. But like right next to our firehouse and next to Wichita West is the Lone Star Muscle Car Shop. And there's like a showroom of all these. I go tell that old Chevelle, or go tell Bobby his old Mustang, was it 65, Bobby?
65, Ricky. 65. Sorry, that's a lift going.
His 65 Mustang, what I'm saying? This is an 81 that's like new. This thing is like, oh my God, I can't wait. The guys, so like as John said, it's going to have its third life right there in Wichita West. So one volunteer department helping another one out from New York to Texas. How cool is that?
I love it. And you'll have to post as the story as you're traveling. You have to be posting pics and stuff to keep us all updated on how it's working out.
Well, yeah, and I'm going to post the fact that my best buddy in the whole world, his department where he's chief, is donating the rig. We're flying all the way to New York to drive it all the way back, and he's not going to be there. He's going to be
somewhere.
I'm not going to get to see my buddy, but man, we are excited. We are excited.
It's going to be off teaching or something, probably, right?
It's exciting.
So I got a question. Go ahead, Chief.
I was sitting here thinking about when you just mentioned, the guys that are all the volunteer, the career guys that that are all volunteers. There are so many.
Oh.
There are so many that you'd be shocked. People like Bobby Pressler, Mike Lombardo, Tim Klett, Pete Lund, and Jay Jonas. It goes on and on and on. John Norman. It just goes on and on and on. I could list probably 15 to 20 names of people that write for the magazines and make presentations at the big shows, and they're all well known and they're all dedicated career firefighters. But most of them also started in the volunteers, and a lot of them, including the guys I just mentioned, are all still active in the volunteers right now, which is, I'm glad I did it, because I know some guys that over the years were volunteers, they got into FDNY, and as the years went on, maybe they promoted, maybe they studied, maybe they got active, maybe they got families. And some guys sort of faded away from the volunteers for numerous reasons, time, and et cetera. I ended up staying involved, and I'm glad I did. There were times when I was not as involved as I am now, when you're busy studying or working in the rescue and working a side job or whatever. But I'm so glad I did, because now the FDNY has passed. Now the FDNY is in my future. Now it's just a memory to me, but I'm still a member of South Paloma Grove, and I'm so thankful. And a couple of guys I know that over the years dropped out said, oh man, I wish I'd have stayed. I said, go back and join up. They'll take you back, unless you left flipping on a bird or something. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Go back and jump in now in your retirement. It's something for you to do. Every Wednesday night I'm at the firehouse. I'm home every day during the day if I have to. I mean, even after I'm chief, I can run down. I might be the first or the second guy in the rig,
Well, and all four of us have talked about this. Bobby, John, Tom, we've all talked about this. So many of the people we work with, so I would just say so many firefighters start out as volunteers, and then they get that career job, and God bless them. That's what they're doing. They're, that's going to be their career. They're going to do. They're going to pay for their kids' schools, their homes. They're going to, that's going to be their job, right? Their profession, if you will. I don't have a problem with that, and I don't have a problem, like John, like you said, if guys later on say, I think I'm working this, I'm doing this, I'm handling my kids, scout trip, I'm doing my daughter's, softball games. What I don't like is the guys that start out as volunteers. The volunteer fire department actually got them trained up, took care of them, got them in, they introduced them to the fire service. They get on a career department and they turn around and they crap on a volunteer fire department, or they talk trash about them. I'm like, look, if you get to a point where you go, I don't want to volunteer, God bless you. Thank you for the 3, 4, 5, 10 year, whatever you did, but you don't turn around and diss your own heritage.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's what I've always wrestled with, is how can you do that? How can you turn around and trash talk the very group of people that gave you your chance to get your shot?
Where you came from, your source, your origin, right?
Right.
What's that say about you?
Right.
Seriously, it tells you something about your personality and your integrity, your character, when you can do that.
Yeah, I added a new section in my professional volunteer presentation that doesn't have to be necessarily a career firefighter, but what bothers me is, we celebrate this grand heritage in our history and our brotherhood and our sisterhood, and then the keyboard warriors that are so quick to take to social media to crucify the firefighters that, we all have a bad day at the office. we can all watch things that we cringe and say, "Ooh, why did they do that?" Or our department wouldn't do that. But to immediately take to the keyboard and blast it, to me, that goes against everything that we stand for, not just as firefighters, but as professional
Well,
firefighters.
that's because the idiots on the keyboards. We know there's a lot of great people in Facebook and all the, Twitter and all the other social media platforms. But you know what? There's a lot of people out there that don't have anything else in their life going but that. And the minute they hear something or read something, they bang it right back out. Rick has advised me many times, and I've gone to him and said, man, I am dying to write something about this entry. Look at this. He said, slow down, wait till tomorrow, think about it a little bit. And most of the time, it's a good thing to do. It's just like yelling when you're driving, having an encounter with a vehicle, or even an encounter with somebody on a street or in a supermarket. If you take a breath and calm down, you're fine. But there's folks out there that are, like you said, they're banging on that keyboard all day long. They don't have anything else to do. All they're doing is ripping people down and being critical about things. And once in a while, I love when a guy answers them and says, "Hey, who died and left you, boss? Everybody does things a little bit different around here, And
Right.
I went to your bio page. You got like a dumpster fire for experience, and you're talking like you're one of the McCaffrey brothers from Backdraft.
Right.
Chief Halton, are you still with us?
He looks like he's putting the boat away.
He does, doesn't he?
Indoor storage. Boy, oh boy. I guess I'm gonna have to go out and cut my leaves on my push lawnmower.
Well, but Tom, I'm again, we've talked about this so many times that the old days are gone for volunteers in the way of it takes someone now. In the old days, you showed up and you went to drill night, you went to your stuff, but we trained you in firefighting and a little bit more. Now, the commitments that volunteer firefighters have to make are dramatic. I mean, we got to get you training EMS, we got to train you hazmat. It's the old days. Billy didn't care for Billy's hardware store if when they blew the siren, you ran out, he lost money. Now you can't leave your job. You can't leave your job. You can't leave. So the commitment, when I say, volunteers are a very special group of people, those that volunteer, again, it's a position. It's not, we're not talking like that. We said before. It takes someone very special to make their meeting nights, make their drill nights, make, the rig check nights and all the different things you're doing nowadays than it was in the old days, because competing demands, everybody's kids are into so much stuff. The 50s and 60s were a different time when it came to how much you had to commit to. And there was great volunteers back then, don't get me wrong, but it takes someone, you want to talk about selflessness and commitment nowadays to be a volunteer firefighter. Those that are good at it, man, there's a lot of time and effort. There's a lot of, I said, selflessness put into that it takes to be a good volunteer nowadays. And you can't be, first of all, you can't be half-assed at anything and talk about being good. If you don't love what you do, you suck at it. I've said it for a long time. But man, oh man, it takes someone very special. And I'm just selfish. I look at the guys and gals I'm working with, I go, they're pretty freaking cool. I mean, they come from all walks of life. They come from all different career paths. They come from all different homes, all different size homes, different size families, everything else. And I look at the engine, I go, wow, look who just showed up for this call. There's 5 guys in his engine. And this was with the Air Force. This one is a veterinarian. This one's a Texas, Forest Service firefighter. This one's a deputy sheriff. This one, I'm like, holy, I mean, it's pretty cool. It to come together like that, it's pretty special. It takes someone very special to do it.
I say it all the time. I said it on the show once. I used an expression that I was at the Pinsky Law Conference back in March, and Attorney Pinsky loved what I said. He put it on a slide, but I said, the fire service of the 60s, 70s, and 80s was fantastic. They did great things. They accomplished a lot. They had great people. They fought more fire than we'll probably see today. But those days are gone and never coming back. But it doesn't mean the volunteer fire service of 2021 can't be great either. Doesn't mean that at all.
Absolutely. And again, John said it, we have the opportunity, all 4 of us, to travel all over, North America, Canada, United States, and get to see both great career departments, great volunteer departments, stations. I've been in volunteer firehouses that are spotless, not just Snyder. I've been in Snyder. You can eat off the floor at your place, but the rigs, the rig checks, and let me just say this:
you can get in. It's quick.
There you go.
when we talk about it, I bring up this thing, Tom, about I always ask, when do we start picking and choosing our calls, those volunteers? And I was in Connecticut. It was a department there. I was doing an evening program. I was in the afternoon having coffee, and the sign off said I had 100 years of volunteering, and 188 years of volunteering still going, 100% volunteer, 100% of the time. And about 2:00, they set off the tones for a gas leak, and two guys showed up. It's daytime, and the rig's running lights, and they set off the tones again, a siren, a third. Finally, the chief says go. And about 40 minutes later, they turned out for a structure fire. And I swear to God, you need a valet parking. There were so many cars. And I'm like, where did all these guys come from? Well, I just got home from work, right? I said, no. You heard the gas leak call.
No, you're done.
Said, I'm not going to do that. So I tell the story. When I started as a volunteer, Barney Sadowski was my chief, retired district chief from Chicago, just as volunteer fire department, big chief from Chicago. And he goes, Lasky, you're a Polak Italian. I'm going to make this easy on you. He handed me this old Plectron thing, right? This radio, just two knobs on it, no lights. And he said, when you get home, plug this in the wall. It's going to go off, three different times. One time it's going to be a test night, test of the radio. The other night's going to be drill night. The other one's going to be for a call. For a call. Tell you what, to make this easy, why don't you just come to the firehouse all three times? If it's a call, you should be coming up. If it's drill night, you should be coming up. If it's test night, come up here and clean something. There's always stuff that needs to be cleaned in the firehouse. He didn't say, hey, Lasky, just wait and listen. And then if it's exciting, come up. And no, the tones went off. You went up there. If you didn't make the rig, you felt bad. And you hung around. When the rig came back, you cleaned it up. But he didn't say pick the exciting calls. It was just one of those.
I get that from my wife now, right? So I'm sitting in the house, even a little bit early, we just had a run. So I'm sitting in the house, all of a sudden, the pager goes off, startles you. The first thing I do is start walking toward the door. I'm walking through the house. Now, I pick up the pager, I'll take it off my belt just to listen to it better, but I don't stop to see what it is. I keep walking. I can hear and walk at the same time, out the back door, down the ramp. Sometimes I'm in my car by the time they actually say, or sometimes I'm actually outside doing something when it goes off. I'm going down the driveway listening to where the run's going to be. And, I mentioned this in an article recently. Number one, it gets you to the firehouse faster, because if the volunteers are down on anything, if they're short on anything, it's response time, because they're coming from somewhere else. They're coming from home. They're coming from work. They're coming from wherever, right? But I try and make up for it by just responding immediately. Sometimes I'm already out of the house, and all of a sudden you hear, oh, South Lemon Grove chief's call, chief call fire control. So I end up just calling in and seeing what's going on. It's something, non-emergency. I think it should be the same thing in the fire service, because FDNY and a lot of other places, like a run will come in, you'll hear the tone go off, and then you'll hear engine, ladder, battalion, that electronic voice that comes out of the computer. And everybody waits to hear that to see if they're going. I always said, the minute you hear the tone go off, everybody should be up and moving towards the rig. And if it just says engine, and it doesn't include ladder and rescue, or ladder and battalion or whoever, then they can turn around and go back to the dinner table. And everybody's got that 10-second jump on it. Everybody's like, what's 10 seconds? I remember a class I watched one time where a guy was showing his team how to get a face piece on faster and faster, faster and faster. All these little shortcuts, keeping a couple of the straps tightened up, doing it with your gloves on, throwing your helmet back instead of taking it off. Make a long story short, when he got done, they say 15 seconds. This guy said, hey, Cap, 15 seconds is like, what's the big deal? He said, hey, it's not your 15 seconds. And in the volunteer fire department, that's even exaggerated even more, because time is even more important. So the faster you get to the rig, the faster you head out the door, and in the volunteer department, get your own vehicle and start driving towards the firehouse, the faster those folks are going to get the help that they're looking for.
And it's like jumping the calls. I mean, we used to talk about on the career side where the guys would start creeping. They'd hear the neighboring town bump out to a structure fire. They hear them clear the station, and they start driving. I know where I'm at, Wichita West, Iowa Park, Burke Burnett, they bump out to a structure fire. There's a bunch of us heading up to the fire. Joe's texting me, hey, did you hear Iowa Park's got a joy? They just we're in our cars heading up there already. They haven't even got to their own call yet, or decided what, and we're on our way going, God, I hope they call us. I hope they call us, our neighbor.
And that's why I'm glad you guys brought that up, because I'm walking back to my Yukon with my wife right now. But that's why we had to buy that 06 GT Racer, because that car with 500 horsepower, I can get that thing up to about 120 in about 30 seconds, which is great. And I'm saving time. That's the only reason I got it, because
and it's fire engine red.
No, this one's black and it's silver.
Oh,
and
the other one,
black.
the other
It's
one.
one of his
Mustang.
other toys. It was after the boat, but before the Mustang.
It's another Mustang, John.
Oh.
God.
Little brand loyalty there.
Oh,
But seriously, what volunteer department does anyone know that doesn't? I mean, you're right. You're at the firehouse, right? And you hear the neighboring town bump out to a call, and next thing you hear a couple car doors close, and you're in there, and in comes Tom Merrill. Hey, Tom, what you doing? Oh, I was on my way home from bowling, my bowling league, and I figured I'd stop by. Really, that's all? You didn't hear, Justice on a call? Well, no. Why is your gear on the rig already then? You heard it. You drove up here. Don't lie to me. You're up here too, hoping we get
And
bumped
I'll
out.
tell you what, we had a job a couple of months back. Turned out to be a serious fire with the rescue, and unfortunately, the victim did succumb. But that day that came in, right from the call, right from the first page, it was a serious fire, possible trap victim. I'm zooming to the firehouse. I get there right after not to the firehouse, to the scene. I get there after call 3. He had already transmitted a second alarm. But I'm telling you, the mutual aid companies were there in about a minute and a half because they were doing the same thing. A lot of guys listen in on the pager and they hear somebody next door going out for a structure fire that sounds confirmed. They're already, like you said, they're creeping over that way, or they're just responding. They just get there so quickly, which I was always a little hesitant to praise that because sometimes it causes more confusion. I don't like to get too many people there too fast that are working fire because sometimes in a volunteer, sometimes it's hard. They don't have a prescribed assignment, right? I have to assign everybody. In New York City, they can get there immediately all at once because they all got a job to do, right? But make a long story short, in the end, I'll bet volunteers that are listening up on the calls all the time and starting out quickly when they hear like something that they think they're going to go to, in the end, that ends up being probably have a very positive impact on the response.
Oh, we're calling each other, but John, we're calling on the way. The chief does it. He'll call me and he'll tell me, hey, they're going to get ready to do this. They're probably going to want the brush truck first, and then the tanker or the tender, and I'm calling him, or like I said, we're each paging, texting, calling each other, saying, hey, this we got going, and I'm over here, I'm on my way, and I love that. I love that. Passion drives success, and I love people are passionate about what they do.
And you know what I always like to say too is I call it situational awareness. And I talk about you need to maintain strong situational awareness in your firehouse, what's going on there, in the fire service, what's going on nationally. But I also say you got to be paying attention to what's going on in your area. And when you can do it, of course, you can't always monitor your radio if you're at church or doing something like that, a school event, but you should, when you can, be listening to what's going on in your area. And like you said, you'll have a jump start on, hey, when they call you for aid or you're already halfway to the firehouse, you know what's going on. You've heard the size up.
Well,
Exactly.
I'll tell you, I've got, as you can hear, we're loading up, so I'm gonna have to sign off here in a second. But I want to say two things. One is that I can either confirm or deny that Chief Lasky and I have actually done the aforementioned practice on several occasions together. So not that I think that's a bad thing. Chief Salka can yell at us later. But yeah, right. But I did want to say, really, Tom, congratulations on a landmark show and all you've done for us. I can't tell you how grateful we are here at Fire Engineering and FDIC, and it's just a pleasure to know you and get to hang around and see you really, do great things for fire service. And I think that irrespective of what, irrespective of your career, you get paid or you volunteer and you're not, we're all firefighters. We're all in it for the same reason. And you really, every time you talk, that comes home. So it's always a pleasure to be around you and these other two knuckleheads as well. So, just really great. And I just want to say thank you. And I apologize, but it's always family first. So I'm back to my fam. We've got the boat docked and put away. The guns are away. The sun is down. It's time for dinner and get ready for Monday.
Well, that sounds like it was a great Sunday, Chief. Thank you for joining.
You, Bobby. Love you, pal.
Thank you.
Love you both. So take care, guys. Bye now.
Thank you so much. So
Tom, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Here's my question. So who was the first professional? Who was the first person you reached out to in the fire service when you wanted to get an article printed or put on the air or something like that. Who was it that you contacted? Do you
You
remember?
try to get me in trouble?
Who was it? Who was it really?
Well, it was you at our installation dinner, right?
Did everyone hear that? Carefully, did everybody hear that?
Oh,
I
God.
take credit. I take full credit for Tom Merrill. I take
Isn't it nice? I mean, it's like Joe Pesci with when you're watching Jersey Boys and he's talking to Frankie Valli, he's like, "Hey, remember, I discovered you." You know,
I was the scout. I was the scout that picked him up, you know.
I'll
But
never forget thinking, what the hell am I going to write about? Little figuratively, right? And serious, little Tom Merrill from Snyder, New York, volunteer fire. What am I going to write about when you encouraged me to write? And it just
Boy, did you pick a great, hot, relevant topic.
Well,
Yep.
John, you can tell Tom's passionate about for his listeners, because there's been times I know he's called you or texted you saying, "I need some advice." I just had a guy, one of the trolls, right? Like Bobby, we're talking about
Oh, yeah.
one of these very much not a brother in the fire service, pretend firefighter, wears a t-shirt and could fight a fire, in a brown paper bag, saying something. I'm like, you know what? But what I guess, Tom, what I admire about the fact that sometimes that bothers you is because you care.
Right.
People that don't care, people don't give a crap about what they do. Just, I don't care. Okay. But you know what? You've got a mission, and it's a great one. Like Bobby said, you got a passion for what we do in the fire service, especially from the volunteer side. And, 1.2 million firefighters, 63% are still volunteer. It's always been 63 to
Yeah, it's over 800,000 still. From what I know.
It's still the backbone. But I love your passion for what you do. I love your passion. I love that you'll dig in sometimes and you'll go toe to toe with someone that might have a different viewpoint, which both John and I and Bobby, all three of us do that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But you've done some great things. But I tell people all the time, there's a couple volunteer firefighters. Before I started volunteering at Wichita West, I used to talk about your place and Amboy. And John, you've been there a ton of times. Amboy Fire Department in Amboy, Illinois. Our good friend Jeff Bryant's chief, and then right next door, Sublet with Nick Dingus as assistant chief, and they both are part of obviously Dingus Fire Company. Oh my God! Oh my! That whole area, the volunteer fire service there in that part of Illinois, is incredible. And I love, John. I love walking in that fire. Like you said, I love walking to Snyder. You can eat off the floor. It's a beautiful firehouse. And then in the middle of a farming community, there's 2,500 people in this little town in Illinois that's been there for like 600 years. And this is great volunteer. Now they're EMS, they handle it a little bit differently. It's a different unit, not fire-wise, part of the fire department, but oh my God, the volunteer firefighters, they're absolutely incredible. And so I've always bragged about your department, Tom. If you want to see how to do it right as a volunteer fire department, if you want to see how to do it right as a fire department, go to Snyder, Amboy, Wichita West. If you want to see how to do it as a volunteer fire department, hit those three departments again, Amboy, Snyder, Wichita West, Sublet. You're going to see some people that know how to make it work. They know how to take care of the men and women that work for them. Especially, John, I've talked about it, the finesse you have to use as a volunteer officer, a volunteer chief, because, on the career side, it's Lasky, if you don't sit, I'm going to send you home and all that. You can't, now you can't let guys get away with murder, but there's some finesse because they're volunteering their time, so you have to kind of do that tap dance, you give orders, you hold them accountable. Don't get me wrong, all that stuff. Don't read me wrong what I'm saying. But as a leader, there's that finesse you got to use because you got people that are giving up their time to come volunteer. So that being said, there's maybe a little bit different avenue you take when it comes to coaching and counseling that, I think it's harder. I think volunteer officers have it 1,000 times tougher than the career guys do. Number one, sometimes you don't know who's riding behind you.
You can't fire them.
Yeah. I mean, it's a whole different world. I mean,
you can't fire, you got to inspire. That's what I like to say. You got to, your people, you got to make them want to be there
and Tom, I'm sitting here thinking about what John said earlier. Again, he started mentioning people, I'm thinking some of my best friends and some of my idols, Donnie Haid, who retired with John. How many years did Donnie have? 42?
40, I think 2 or 3, yeah.
42 or 3. Donnie Haid. on Baldwin, volunteer firefighters, Sal Marchese with South Hempstead, I think, and like I said, John Norman, and you go down this line, like he said, Jay Jonas and Pete Lund, and some of my heroes, and some of my friends go, and I never, you don't really, when you're into the job, you don't pay attention. Yeah. He does that. He's on the Valley, he's doing, you don't even, but when we're talking about it in your show, I start sitting there, I'm going through my head, all these guys that I love and admire, pretty much I'm trying to think of one that doesn't volunteer. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Eddie Enright from Chicago, career guy, 30 years Chicago. I don't think he volunteered, maybe beforehand, but and I love and adore Eddie, but all these other people, Bobby Hoff, with Evergreen Park and all these guys that started out as reservists and volunteers, and the guys I admire the most either did it or they still do it, and they volunteer, which I think that says something.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you for those kind words about our department. And it shows that if you get something established, it can just carry on, because it started long before I became a chief officer. I'll mention some mentors to me. There was Chief Tom Kenny, Chief Tom Hammond, Chief Jim Keppel, Chief Al Brown, John Files. They kept this ball moving in the 80s and 90s. They picked it up from the chiefs of the 70s, the Chief Robert Drexilius, and so many others. And we just have kept it going. Our current chief, Mark Van Horn, who's finishing up now, he's in his 5th and final term. And I know the baton's going to get handed over to Chief Timmy Oliver, who's our first assistant right now. And we'll keep these great things going. It just picks up momentum and goes. And there's always going to be challenges, but a good department can look at challenges and not be afraid to try new things and overcome the challenges. And that's where I wanted to kind of finish off with you guys on this special episode, because the challenges are so well documented, between the age of the fire average volunteer increasing, call volume increasing, funding challenges, and obviously people power challenges, right? We're dealing with this at my department. You guys were joking with me before the show because we have a strong auto aid in place now. And I want to give my whole town kudos we had a small fire Friday night. From what I understand, I was out of town at a family gathering at my daughter's college. So of course I missed the fire, but I heard the crews did spectacular. Auto aid, it was a bedroom fire, got into an attic, hoarder conditions. The crews overcame any obstacle. They knocked the fire down in no time, worked spectacularly together. But we have auto aid in place 24/7 now, because why? We have some people power challenges, just like just about every other volunteer company. So we have a committee together. We're looking at all new ideas. Just last week, we approved an hours program now. You guys know who Dr. Candace McDonald is, right? She does a lot of recruitment. She has a great line about, maybe the day of holding people accountable to make a certain percentage of calls is past, and maybe we should make them account for so many hours. You'll volunteer so many hours a month. So we're going to try that. Not for everyone. You can pick and choose. You can either do hours or you can volunteer to just go when you're free and available.
And do you know who does that? Do you know who does that now?
Who's that?
A lot of the ambulance corps do that.
Yeah.
Yep. Because you could ride, like my wife's a volunteer in the Blooming Grove Ambulance Corps, and she's also one of the officers. And that's what they do. They measure hours. So you can work 10 hours, 12 hours, 15, 30. There's a certain minimum of hours per month that you got to put in, meaning you got to be there for those hours. So that's duty time. They come in and clean up, work on something, check on rigs. Training counts as well. Runs count as well. But you could go to the volunteer ambulance corps. You could sit there all day long and get one run. They still get their 9 hours or the 12 hours.
Yep.
Somebody comes in the next day, works for 12 hours. They get 13 runs in that 12 hours. They don't get a nickel more than you. They don't get an hour more than you. It's time. Time is actually a much fairer measurement of people, their input into a volunteer fire department, because you actually have to do it. You see, just making runs is easy because it's like, whoo, another run, you go. How about sitting there for 7 hours, working on a rig, washing the rigs, doing this, and then you put a mark in the book. Okay, Chief Salka, John Salka, Bill Jones was here for 5 hours, removed pre-connect number 1, washed the hose, replaced it with new hose, and hung the hose in the dryer. You put a little thing in there, you put your 4 hours, somebody comes in and totals that all up.
I really like that. I like that because, like you said, John, there's guys that can wait a little, they can hold back a little bit, make sure guys make the rig and take off. And then, I just pulled up, I just missed the rig again. They get a check mark for being there for the call. But like you said, what about, like by me, the Mark Venzer or the Joe Dillon that comes up and washes like all the rigs or washes the apparatus floor or paints the tools or, you know, they do, and you're like, well, I came up here, I was up here for Saturday.
Yeah.
I was here for 4
I didn't
hours on
get anything
Saturday
for
doing
it.
it. And there's really no way to account for that. You know what I'm saying?
The
I
guy
mean,
that's going to come and pick you up at the airport when you come up to pick that rig up, Big Daddy, right?
yeah,
He is at the firehouse every single morning at 6:30. He gets up, showers, changes, lights the cigar, drives over to the firehouse, comes in, checks all the rigs out, makes sure the doors are good. In the case of your rig, he starts it up every morning because, you know, we know you guys are coming to get it. But there's always something going on. He always comes by the firehouse, spends at least an hour every morning. That's 7 hours a week right there that he gets zero credit for. He gets nothing for. Now, obviously, we could fill paperwork out for that. He could come to me and say, Chief, I've been doing some special work every morning, and here's my form. They give me a point, you know, for the point system, for the LoSAP system. But for the actual runs and stuff like that, there's no indication. There's no record of that work.
And here's the thing. And I was going to bring this up, Tom, when we talked about, like, and John, you and I've talked about a bunch of times. So you get a guy or gal who's older who something happened, maybe they hurt their back or something, they can't go interior anymore. So we have exterior firefighters, right?
Yep.
Or guys that John tanker firefighters, or they drive the tanker, or, you know, they come up to the firehouse and they do house watch when you're on a run. They make coffee and maybe they've changed quarters companies. When you're talking hours versus calls, there's another role for, you know what I'm saying? You want to keep your people involved. If they know they're going to be, you know, you say, look, my job takes me away where I can't make we get the majority of our calls, you know, in the evening. I'm working, but look at how many times I'm here during the week, you know, doing stuff, hanging out, making sure, you know, whatever. That's a great, God, it's a great idea.
You know what else is great about it?
Hours.
You know what else is great? And Dr. Candace said this so well at FDIC. I wrote it down this year. But she said, why should Joe or John or Joan be penalized when they pick going to their kid's soccer game or their kid's baseball game as opposed to going to the fire call or emergency call? In other words, yeah, for the major serious call, they probably would leave. But in other words, if you go to the hours program, at least you know you can block out segments of time where you're not taking away from your family.
And you could end up putting in a greater commitment, possibly even. You could end up actually being there more than you would just on runs. You know. And
John, let's say you made 5 runs this week at your volley department, or 4, let's say 4 or 5 instead of 12 or 15, if that's how many you ran. But yet, out of those 5 runs you made, 2 of them you were there for 4 hours. You know what I'm saying? Instead of, you know, when we're counting single runs, single run could be you were there 5 minutes, it was canceled. Versus the other day, we sat on a standby while the cops were on a manhunt. You know, this guy they had a chase, and we sat there for several hours, you know, to take care of the deputies, and those guys are out there. But I'm like, so if that's the only call you made, but you were there for 3, 4, 5 hours. That again, I love this idea.
What's this person's name? Candace what?
McDonald.
You know,
Candace. You have a book or an article or what?
She teaches at FDIC. She's part of the National Volunteer Fire Council. She's a big recruitment and retention spokeswoman.
John, you know exactly. You know who Candace is. You know who she is. You better. She.
That's an interesting point. I'll tell you, and it's been working for years for the Volunteer Ambulance Corps. Now listen, the difference between the Volunteer Ambulance Corps and the Volunteer Fire Department is what?
Well,
they run ambulance calls.
No, staffing requirements.
Yeah.
You only need 2 people to run an ambulance.
Right.
All day long. They could do 10 runs today. 2 people. The same 2 people on duty or volunteering, or sometimes Dawn goes in as a volunteer working a shift, and there's a paid person sitting in the ambulance with them, and they're working a shift because they couldn't get 2 volunteers. But it's still the same 2 people that cover 10 runs during the day. Fire department, we don't just need 2 people. When we do have a run, we need more, but it's not like you're throwing runs away. You're not saying runs don't count anymore. They're still going to count, but somebody who can't make the runs, or who's less able to make the runs, or, you know, the older folks, people that are maybe slightly injured or not as physically fit anymore. So now there's a role. Nobody's going to want to quit going to fires. That's for sure. Right. The guys that aren't going to fires now aren't going to go to fires then. It's not going to change it. And the kids that are going now that like going to fires are still going to go out to them, even if they have their minimum for the month, you know?
Well, and everybody's got, over the years, I've seen people penalized, like, all right, they start out, they're single, they're making all the runs, they're at the firehouse all the time. Then they get married and they got a husband or a wife, and next thing they got a kid, and then pretty soon their kid's in band, and the other one's in scouts, the other one's, you see that, everything ebbs and flows. You see all of a sudden their time commitments are being played, and we're almost like we're penalized. Well, you know what, John, why don't you just take a leave? And when you come back, start making more calls, right? How many times you heard that? Instead of going, look,
I've had guys ask me, Chief, what do I do? I get this guy with 10 years, 15 years. Maybe there's two of them. They're really falling off the chart. They don't come to training anymore because they say they work at night and this and that. What do I do? And my answer always was call them in the office and tell them, listen, we can't do anything without people. You can't really do anything without training. Either start making some training or, we're going to take your gear away and take your Pectron away. When you can make more, you're not throwing you out, but we're taking you off the rigs. You're not active anymore. When you can make more time, we'll give it back to you. Instead, you could say, plan B is, you know what? Pick a day or two a week when you're going to come, hang out. I have a list on the wall. There's always a list on the wall of stuff that needs to be done. Designated by the chief, right? This. Come in any day of the week, pick something off the list and do it. Spend the 2 or 3 hours on the Monday or the Saturday. And guess what? That at least relieves you of having a total negative,
And if you can't do any of that, then you probably are in a position where you need to take a leave of action. You can't commit time, not just calls. All right, calls are like you go a whole month without having a call when you're available. They seem to always hit when you're working, but you can commit. If you can't do that, maybe you have to take a leave. But I think so many people have been run out of the volunteer firehouses because of how their lives change. Right. You see all these guys that are older, their kids are out of the house, and now they're going, I can't believe these kids don't show up. You were there too. You were running a softball game. So maybe I can commit more to these projects, or maybe I can come back and do this. Like I said, if I only make 5 calls instead of 15 or 18, but out of those 5 calls, 3 of them were multiple hour calls, that's got to count for something, not just a check mark that I made a call.
And that whole thing circles back to what we were talking about just a little bit ago about, the volunteer fire service of the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, great times. They did great things, but we have to evolve and change with the times. And so we have this recruitment and retention committee. This is one of the ideas they brought us. They've brought us some other ideas, and my board last Tuesday night approved it. It's launching probably by the first of the year. We got to work out some things with exactly.
I'm glad I thought of that. That's a great idea.
But and I want to bring, when you just mentioned something, Tom, you made me think of something, because we talked before about automatic aid and mutual aid. It's like, regardless of having automatic aid come because you might be a little light during the day, and maybe only get 2 people on the rig or whatever, we've always professed think big anyway. Think big. If you get a fire, think big. You drop a mayday, you're already outmatched. Why don't you have more than enough people coming, get the help coming, all that stuff, But I was at a place, and we talk about recruitment retention. I think the days of putting a blinking sign in front of the firehouse saying, come help us, you're not going to appeal that many people. It'll work, but not as good as it used to. Same thing with putting some on your webpage. And John, you've heard me talk about this. I was walking through a firehouse, and across the bay was a trailer. And I went, oh, is that your pub ed trailer? Look like a pub ed, and he goes, no, that's a recruitment trailer. And I said, really? We walk over, and it's all got, how they do their skins now. It's wrapped with like their logo, their engine, and flames and stuff. And he opens up the big door like a food truck, and a sign. There's 2 big TVs in it. He starts playing. They have the video they did, and they're cutting cars apart, and they're fighting fires, and there's a guy talking to you. And then they roll out the gear, and they got a mannequin, they got some props, and they got this, and they have like the jaws of life, the hearse tool there, and all the spreaders, and they have pamphlets. He goes, we drag this to every Friday night football game, every craft show, anywhere they'll let us pull it. And I went, this is because it's like the carnival. Like, come on over here, come on. And they stand out there. He says, we get a ton of action with this. People come, especially when they have some lights on, lights up, some revolving lights. But when we start bringing the gear out and the SCBA and the tools, and, hey, firefighters always had the best toys, and I thought, what a great idea. It's a recruitment trailer. They drag around we're finally creeping into what all the colleges do and what all the other people do. And, they've had great ideas for decades, and we've never copied them. And now we're finally coming up with stuff. I thought that's a great recruitment idea for volunteers.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Dr. McDonald had another great line that I just want to tell you guys. She goes, Sears was what, the number one retailer forever, right? Who can ever forget getting a Sears catalog at Christmas time? And you've all seen the historical vintage catalogs from the turn. You could buy a house at one time through
Yeah.
Sears, put together.
You weren't
Great.
looking at the women in underwear in that Sears catalog now, were you?
No, sir. No, sir.
All right.
But she said, it's kind of, if the volunteer fire service isn't careful, they could be like Sears, and
Well,
you have
and there's a book written called The Tipping Point, and it's a book
Great
about
book.
about like how UPS kept adjusting. UPS was like, they were horses, and driven by wagon. And then when the catalogs came out, and then they went, what happened with the internet? They that's how they got into airplanes and deliveries and all this different stuff. They just kept, there's the tipping point, and you can either roll with it and change, or you can be gone. And some of these big retailers are gone because they didn't change.
Right.
And if you don't adjust how you're doing things with the volunteer fire service, just how we said, how we recruit, how we keep people, whether you accept hours versus call numbers. I love that. I love that concept. How we attract people. I've said this too, John. How many times you hear me say this? And Tom, I've talked to you about it. When it comes to recruiting, what a lot of chiefs I've said they should do is, if you got 25, 30 guys, 40 guys, whatever on your roster, grab a handful, like 3 or 4 or 5 of your all-stars. Grab Tom Merrill and John Salka. Hey, come here for a sec. Look, do me a favor. Tommy, go find me one more like you. Relative, neighbor, Little League, Girl Scouts, whatever, family member, find me one more like you. And if your nucleus, if your all-stars found you one more like them, think of what you're building. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's what I said. Go find, what, if you already like what John Salka's doing as your volunteer firefighter, ask him to find one more like him.
And I'll tell you another thing you can add to that, and some people be a little shaky with this, but I think you could almost put a price on their head. You could almost say, find one more guy just like you, a neighbor, somebody you work with, the guy across the street or whatever like that, and you get $100 gift card, $100 gift card to the steak restaurant down the block as well. So we throw in a little reward in there too. And you know what? I would hate to think anybody would do it just for the money, but that makes it more attractive. You know what? If volunteer departments, especially nice places like Snyder, in bigger communities that have good budgets, they have that money. The company could fund that. You know what I'm saying? Rather than the department. And you could say $100 gift card for each new member that each member subscribes.
And I like the signs I've seen at some of the volunteer firehouses when they're recruiting, saying, looking for volunteer firefighters, bad pay, but you get a really cool helmet, that kind of stuff. It's like,
cool uniform. Yeah.
And we saw the advertisements on the pole at Dunkin' Donuts. Remember?
Oh God, yeah.
And on the pizza box, I heard you guys talk about.
Yeah,
right?
the Ballard posts. We're going to Dunkin' Donuts for teaching, and the volunteer department has us out right there. You're staring at, and then how about the pizza boxes, John? They ordered a couple thousand pizza boxes. You open the whole lid is the fire department, and come recruit, come be a volunteer. And I was like, God, people who deliver pizzas. When you open the lid, the whole lid is an advertisement for the volunteer fire department. And the ball on the post at Dunkin' Donuts. I'm like, God, that's pretty cool.
That's innovative thinking right there. So I just we've been going for an hour now. I don't want to keep you guys any longer, but I just wanted to finish with, again, we've talked about some of the challenges and issues with the volunteer fire service. I'd like to get both of your takes on where the volunteer fire service is going. What do you see down the road for the volunteer? There's some that are predicting 5 years from now there'll be no more volunteer fire service. Hogwash. Over 800,000 volunteer firefighters. They're not going anywhere. But as we said, change is inevitable. Change is necessary. What do you see? Rick, I'll start with you.
I used to sit there years ago and sit there and go, God, where the volunteer fire department's going to go? Eventually the more cities grow and they start annexing and taking over different departments, it's like, God, they're just going to disappear. And I'll tell you, yes, that's happened where there's been some entities that have annexed in unincorporated areas, and doing so, some volunteer departments have been eliminated. I've seen some volunteer departments merge, not eliminate the department, but they said, you know what, we need to do better with our resources. Let's get our two departments together, blah, 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 so on and so forth. But it's not going away. It never will go away. I think number one, you definitely don't want a federal fire department. When people say we should have one fire department, really, we saw how that goes already with stuff. You know, I think everything ebbs and flows. I think some of the people coming out with the great ideas on how to recruit. I think some of the old timers that are willing to change and go, it's not the same not the same volunteer fire service of the 70s. Even from the 80s, like you said, we have to adjust. There's competing demands. We have to figure out ways to lure people. Let's do more citizens fire academies, because guys and gals get done there. They go, so Tom, what do I have to do to actually be a volunteer? Kind of just what you did going through the Citizens Fire Academy, except a little, maybe a little bit more, and you have to get some certification. Really, that's it. And now, boom, you got that. The numbers haven't dropped that dramatically. I mean, really, if you want to compare it to the 40s and 50s, yes, but I think they're holding true. I think some of the volunteer departments out there have actually gained in their numbers. Some have always stayed the same. They got 12 people, 20 people, and that's all they're going to have because they're out in an area where that's all they can draw from. But I don't think it's going anywhere. I think right now, to be honest, they're pretty strong. Look, there's career departments that are folding up shop. There's career departments that have no money. There are career departments that, are driving crappy rigs and what I'm saying? These whole cities that have no budgets and all this stuff and everything else. There are volunteer departments that have went away, and they're actually, there's new volunteers. I know I've taught for volunteer departments, Tom, that this is like their 12th year as a volunteer fire department. Like, wow, we're still creating volunteer fire departments. Well, yeah, we needed, there was nobody actually covered this area, and they started building houses, and there was a fire. So we got together. So we need a fire department. So I'm like, I don't know. I don't think it's going anywhere. I think it's strong. I think it's still a group of extremely dedicated men and women that do it. We've got to be creative. I think they need to bring back more of the juniors programs, the Explorer programs, to get people like John and I, as kids, get us interested. Or we couldn't wait to turn 18 to be the real thing. You know what I'm saying? I can't wait. I get to see the high school classes now. I just met with one, and they're out of their minds crazy. You can see their eyes are this big. They can't wait. I was in Jersey, and when the New Jersey Firemen's and Fire Chiefs Conference, and volunteer crew guys, all they get, and I'm with these juniors, and they're like, you could just see they can't wait for the day when they go from being a junior to an actual volunteer firefighter.
Yeah.
So I think we're doing fine. We need some work, just like everything else out there in the world. But it's not going anywhere. I'm proud to be a volunteer firefighter. I'm extremely proud. I love my department, Wichita West. The guys and gals got great bosses, great chief. I think we're fine. There's always room to work on things. I know that, but I think we're fine.
Chief Salka, what do you think? What do you see in the future?
Well, actually, Rick and I usually agree on lots of stuff. And I agree at the baseline that the volunteer fire department is going to survive. However, society is changing, America is changing, priorities are changing, cultures are changing. And I think there's so much change going on that I don't think that the volunteer fire department is in its existing format, at least as widespread as it is right now. I don't think it's going to be exactly the same 5 years or 10 years from now or 20 years from now. What I think has to happen, and I've thought about this before, and I've been saying it for years, actually, there's a couple of other, what would you call it? There's a couple of other models, right, that I think volunteer fire departments would flourish in, other than the exact model that we have right now, which for the most part, your department, Rick, my department, and your department, Tom, we're all identical. We have a facility. We have a 100% volunteer, right? However many members you have, whoever responds, whoever doesn't respond, whether you have low SAP or don't have low SAP, alarm goes in, the alarm is transmitted to that department, tone goes off, summons its people in, whoever comes goes. If you don't come, you go mutual aid or whatever. That's the old-fashioned system, and that's the system that is dying. That's the system that is failing right now. Not all over the country. Some places it's very healthy. In little rural communities where there's not another place right next door, another place right next door, another place right next door, but lots and lots and lots of places. Every state has it. Go to any state firefighters association or chiefs association, and recruitment and retention and low numbers and long response times, they're all gigantic. So my idea, one of them is what Rick just said, combining departments. So we're already combining. You just said it. You have automatic response during the day. You've selected the mode. You've selected the time when you get automatic response for working fires and this. I already have automatic response for any structural call, for any MVA, automatic response from 2 different departments, depending on what side of the district it's on. So already we have combined our departments. And if you talk to ISO, you get credit for departments call stations and apparatus for your ISO rating if they're on automatic response, right? So we've already begun that process. I think that process needs to be expanded. Like, for example, New York State, we're not screwed, but FASNY in the state of New York, the way everything is written, you can't have county fire departments. You can't have things like that. You can have a fire district, and I guess you could probably have a fire district as large as you wanted to, right? Large as you wanted to have one. So you could probably get 3 or 4 fire departments get together and create a new fire district. And the benefit of that would be, so you have the Mineola Fire Department, you have the East Williston Fire Department, you have the Williston Park Fire Department, and you have the Garden City Fire Department. 4 contiguous departments that all touch each other's borders. They each have, let's say, 1 or 2 stations. If 4 of them got together and made the Central Nassau Fire District, now you have 8 departments, right? And once you combine that thing into 8 departments into 1 department, now what do you have? Now you have expanded resources, all on the same channel, all on the same portable radio, all under the same command, all under the same training regimen. And now you can say, for a fire during the day in this zone, this rig and this rig go. If either of them doesn't call out, still volunteer, then we can fall back right on the other one. Now we do that now, but it's a lazy, long process. South Plymouth Grove, any unit in South Plymouth Grove call out yet? No. Then they would have to even wait another minute and call you back again before they tone somebody else out. It's a really long-winded operation.
And some don't even do that. They don't know if they're just wait to see if anybody's coming. They don't even get on the radio.
Right. Sometimes the guy doesn't answer because he's afraid. He's in the rig, but he only has 2 guys there. So anyway, that combining of departments is and all the pluses that would go with it, the command staff and everything else. Obviously, some guys are going to be against it. Right now, you got those 4 departments I just mentioned. Each have their own chief, first assistant, second assistant that serve 3, 6, 9 years, or like yours, 5, 10, 15 years, right? Some guys are not going to want to lose that because now you're going to have 4 departments, a chief maybe from each one, and then whatever their company officer ranks are. So anyway, that's one solution, is combining departments to larger organizations that can be managed better with more resources. The other one is combination departments. Some places have finally realized that, you know what, we got to put 2 paid people on. We have so many calls. That's what happened to a lot of ambulance corps in New York State in the past 20 years. They were fully 100% volunteer, just like the firehouse, no more. Now they all have staffs. Even the volunteer ambulance corps here in Blooming Grove, where Dawn is a volunteer, she often rides with another volunteer, and then the next week she comes in on Friday night and she's working with a paid EMT because they simply can't get another volunteer. Some places in New York State, because New York State does not allow combination departments in any way, shape, or form, which is a problem. Some places in New York State hire housemen, they call it. So they get 2 of the young volunteers from the department that are looking for a job. They hire them either in the village, if it's a village department, the fire district hires them as a houseman. So now we have 2 maintenance people in our volunteer firehouse. They wear uniforms. They come in Monday to Friday, just a day job, because nighttime there's plenty of volunteers around. And these 2 guys or gals work Monday to Friday in the firehouse. They keep it clean. They wash the floors. They clean the bathroom. They wash the rigs. They fill the bottles. They do all the work that a firefighter would do if they were on duty. They're not called firefighters. They're called house maintenance men. House maintenance man number 1 and number 2. They're every day. If a run comes in, like many businesses have for the whole history of the volunteer fire service, they're released. Their contract says during an alarm, you are allowed to respond as a volunteer firefighter and return back to work when the alarm is over. So a lot of people have done that. They've created paid positions that are not actually career professional IAFF, or in case of New York State, there's a separate training standard for career firefighters, and they sort of get around it by creating this house person. The third way is to actually hire paid firefighters for those same hours during the day, career people during the day, just a skeleton crew, just 2 or 3 people backed up by volunteers, and all the chief staff would also be volunteers. The company officers would all still be volunteers, and you'd have 2 or 3 firefighters on duty. And the last way you could do it is another thing that will never happen in New York State, the way things are written, is you do what they do in Massachusetts and plenty of other states, and that is on call. Everybody's a true volunteer, but when you go on a call, you get a $20 bill, and it gets recorded. At the end of the month, if you're real busy, you get a check for $220. If you're not so busy, you get a check for $100. So everybody, there's lots of but on-call departments. So everybody's still a volunteer. They still respond to the pager and the siren. The firehouse is still empty. But when a call comes in, if you make it under certain criteria, you either have to make the rig or you have to be there within 5 minutes of the alarm going off. You sign in at the firehouse. The form is put in just like it is now for points, right, for the run, except those folks get a $20 bill. They get a $20 bill for their response. So I think there are some good solutions out there for the volunteer fire service.
Well, and I agree. And John, like you said, you mentioned, I think it kind of depends on where you're at.
Yes.
That you have different choice, because there's some places that have no problem getting volunteers. There's other places where it struggles, and that's where, you know what, you better get your act together and start doing automatic aid, because by the time you set off the tones for the third time and realize no one's coming, tick, 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 the clock goes. Now you got to call a neighbor, and now they've got to come. Instead of, you know what, drop your ego level down a little bit, and just, you know, how about we just tone out both of us at the same time?
We went on an MVA about 4 hours ago. Before I got to the end of my driveway, the tone was going off from Monroe to respond with us, automatic aid to that same scene. I got there, their chief rolled up 1 minute after me. What do you got? I said, it's right down here. And we handled the call collectively. And it was wonderful. And it was with nobody getting on the radio calling for it, nobody having to decide, is this a serious fire? Does it look real? Boom, boom. Every time MVA structure fire, we get another department responding with us.
So how do we get past, though? How do we get past, and again, this happens both on the career side too, but I hear it all the time with the volunteers. They'll bump out a call. They don't call automatic aid, even though their buddies are waiting for them to call them. And this chief's going route, and dispatch is saying, we're getting reports. Says, all right, I'm almost there. I'm 3 minutes. I'm about 2 minutes out. I'm 3 minutes. And I'm like, if you just call automatic aid, if you just, if you work this out with your buddies, like you said, John, and you go, look, on this side of the district, you guys are coming with an engine and a rescue. On the other side, you guys are coming with a ladder and an engine. And who cares who gets there first? But now it's this whole, I don't want them to beat me to my call. We don't want them to beat us to our call. I don't know if that's as much a big threat anymore as who. I don't think they care who gets to the house fire first. The people don't care.
I gotta tell you, the seminar I was just at in Richmond, a lot of guys are wearing these shirts, and on the sleeve it says them. There's a big push in the fire service lately to talk a little bit more about them. Those folks out there that need to call, not worrying about who gets there first or who gets there second. Oh, there's somebody here. There's a department in this neighborhood that could get to that house faster. Could you explain to me in any way, shape, or form how you could be angry that they get there ahead of you when there's people that are having a heart attack or the house is on fire? They are the priority, not us. We are number two. That's my favorite article. We are number two.
Absolutely. Exactly. Call them, get them coming, and stop this. I'll be there in 3 minutes, or I'll be there in a couple of minutes. Get them going.
Gentlemen, last week when I was working at the fire alarm office, our neighboring company to the east was toned out for a apartment fire with the possibility of entrapment, pretty serious fire. I took the phone call. Woman was calm as could be. I thought she was just going to be calling for an ambulance. She was so calm, and she's like, yeah, there's an apartment building next to me and there's flames coming out the windows. It's the only call we had on it. Anyway, because of the strong automatic aid agreement in place, the neighboring department to them, we were one of them to one side and we went. But the neighboring department on the other side was just returning from a call. So they beat the home department into the fire. Their crew stretched lines. The home department actually was the feeder pumper for them. And you know what? Nobody cared.
Right.
Those things were put aside years ago when we started this program, understanding nights like that are going to happen. That's going to happen. The firefighters have all been trained that we're all one team. And sometimes the team from next door is going to get there first. In this case, it was nothing wrong with the home department. They had a great response, but the other department.
Yeah. John talked about it. He was standing at the front lawn, fire blowing out from downstairs with a victim. Already went out, a victim unconscious inside. His guys making a push the line through the front. And two mutual aid guys with mutual aid, automatic aids in there, they made the grab from the back. Right. His guys pushing. Nobody said, "Oh, this sucks. How come you guys didn't grab?"
Right.
His guys were fighting shit, stuff a crap full of fire, okay, in the front. And John, you remember you told me they were actually the mutual aid guys, not the automatic guys there, but the mutual aid guys made the grab.
Right.
And I'm like, he had automatic aid, he had mutual aid, his guys as one team, and they still drug a woman out. I mean, I'm just saying, because no one cared who got there and when they got there.
And they
They
did
certainly don't care.
they did what true professionals would do. And we circle
Correct.
right back to that word
Correct.
There
professional.
you go.
They identified ahead of time that maybe there might be an issue. How can we best overcome that issue? And what? Serve them. Take care of them. That's what true
Exactly.
professionals do. And they work as a team. And that's been exemplified by what you were just saying. Absolutely.
Exactly.
And Chief Salka, I didn't know, just real quick, I didn't know in New York they couldn't have county departments. I learned something tonight. I didn't realize
New York
that.
State. You live in New York State?
Yes, sir.
New York State is a home rule state. You look that up when we get off this call in a minute, and you look up home rule state, and that is a guiding force. That's a guiding regulation in New York State in the structure of departments, and that's why you don't see any county police or fire departments, with very few exceptions. There are a few exceptions, and they are considered exceptions. They got exempted from the rule.
Now, I also did hear, I've heard of the houseman duties and that. And I've also heard in some legal seminars that you got to be careful with how you do that, because it gets into the Fair Labor Standards Act and things crazy like that. So
I don't see how it could be any different than the guy that work in sanitation down the block for the village.
Understood.
And when a call comes in, they cut them loose. When I was a volunteer in Mineola, there'd be 5 or 6 village trucks in front of the firehouse, all the green trucks with the little orange patch on the door. Because half the guys worked for the village.
Right.
And as soon as the call went off, they went to the firehouse, went on the call, came back, and the village allowed them to be volunteer firefighters.
Right.
What's the difference whether you work in the house?
And there is, it's like, it used to be the 80-20 rule for like EMS versus fire and all that. How much you did of one particular job versus another. So yeah, there's some caution there, but I know a lot of those guys that do that, they're pretty successful at it there,
Absolutely. And young guys get to do a little bit of, so they learn a lot. They're hanging around with tools, and you know what? They get a nice tool list every day. They got a nice work list every day. Check the scotch out, look at fill a few more bottles, make sure you wash the rig, and imagine that all that dirt work getting done by a couple of guys on duty during the day. And then at night it's back to 100% volunteer, but the volunteers still respond during the day. So nobody's losing anything other than, you get the doors up and two rigs started up and waiting for firefighters every call.
Yeah. You know what, like I said, get your damn automatic aid going.
Yep.
Get people work. Call now, especially John, you said it. We have 2 response times as volunteers. We have the response time to the firehouse, and then for the firehouse to the scene. If we cut some time off of that, let's get it. And again, who doesn't want to go to call? If you're a volunteer, don't want to go to call, put your helmet on the curb and go home. Everybody wants to go to calls, and everyone wants to get to that another fire, another MVA or whatever. Get the automatic aid coming sooner.
Yes, absolutely. And I think I mentioned earlier I was at the Pennsylvania conference last week, and again, with all these challenges, we know they're out there. We know there's been a lot of great ideas we talked about tonight. There's a lot more great ideas that are out there that we didn't have time to delve into. As a professional volunteer, don't resist change, embrace it, look at everything, give it a fresh look. Don't be afraid to try things. We're trying it in my department. I'll report back to you next year how the hours program's working out. I'll tell you as more ideas are given to our board from our recruitment and retention committee. If you have some great ideas, bring them to us. Call me, email me, let me know. We'll talk about them on the show. And as I said, the Limerick Fire Department is a shining example of a success story. Now, John, Rick, our listeners know the state of Pennsylvania has been ravaged by the loss of volunteer fire. Probably one of the states that's been hit hardest with the decline of volunteer firefighters. So I'm here to tell you what I saw this past weekend in Limerick, Pennsylvania was a success story where 2 departments merged, the Limerick Fire Department and the Linfield Fire Company. Was the Limerick Fire Company, Linfield Fire Company merged into the Limerick Fire Department. And what I saw were motivated volunteers, hard training volunteers, led by a fantastic chief, Ken Schuler, who the members couldn't say enough about because he was a fair-minded man who just respected everyone. Matt Markland, one of their captains, Scott Miles, who's the one that brought me to the conference. He's one of their lieutenants. They exemplified professionalism. Their families were all involved. They made it family friendly, which, hey, is that important in the volunteer fire service?
Yeah.
And they just were a great example of, to me, how to do things not just professionally, but successfully. And oh, by the way, they had an incredible junior program. They had such respectful young men and women. Yes, sir. No, sir. And they just looked like true professionals. They acted like true professionals, and their membership is strong, 70 plus active members. And it was great to see that with all these challenges we've been talking about. It's great to know that, hey, they tried something, they merged, and they're off and running. Don't
Very
be afraid.
success story.
Yes. So, Rick, John, I can't thank you enough. Chief Halton, I know you're not on anymore. Thank you so much for joining me tonight to celebrate this 50th episode. I'm looking forward to at least another 50 more.
Where's the cake? Well, I thought they said there would be cake.
Oh, that's right. In Louisville, you had
Down there,
cake
maybe
for everything, didn't you? It was always
No
cake.
cake, no candles, no nothing.
I got nothing. Well, you said you got to do an old school podcast, so you guys got to get moving on to that now. So, but real quick, Chief Lasky, if someone wanted to reach out to you, how do they get a hold of you to talk more about this?
Best way is to email chieflasky@gmail.com. And I may not get back to you like within the hour, but I do my best to get back to you.
Chief Salka, how do we get a hold of you?
Chief John Salka @gmail.com.
Gentlemen, thank you not just for being on the show tonight, but for your friendship. I really appreciate everything you've done for me in this great fire service of ours that we love so much. And again, thanks for inspiring me and motivating me and opening doors for me and everything that you've done. I really appreciate it. And
Doing a great job. Great
thank
job.
you for taking the time to be here tonight.
It was fun.
It was awesome. It was fun. It was an honor. And I know I can speak for John. We brag on you everywhere we go. We brag on great people, man. And you know what? Great people make it easy to brag on them. And you do that, Tom. You're doing an awesome job, buddy. Thanks for everything you do.
Oh, thanks again, guys. I really appreciate it. And again, thanks to Chief Halton as well, and everyone at Clarion Events for supporting these podcasts, mine, as well as these fine chiefs and all the other firefighters running such great podcasts. I really appreciate it. If anyone wants to reach out to me, it's tamerrill63@aol.com. Please be sure to check out any of my social media pages, the Professional Volunteer Fire Department on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I'm working on a good YouTube. I do have a YouTube channel. I'm constantly adding, and all my podcasts are on there in chronological order. So please feel
In
free to check it
chronological
out.
order.
They are in chronological order, all updated. This will be uploaded the day after the show, and I'll be back again in a month. And I look forward to again talking about our great volunteer fire service and talking about topics that are so important to all of us. So thanks for tuning in. And remember, people, true professionalism is not defined by a paycheck. And our residents are owed professional service delivered by professional firefighters representing a professional organization. Take care.
Thanks, Tom.